Peru Missions was started 2 years ago around year 213. My wife and I had decided we were going to go to Peru for a trip and that we wanted to do something a little bit different. We decided that we were going to lift up the law of God wherever we went in Peru, but we did not know where to go. I did tell my wife that I wanted to go someplace I had not been in Peru to see something different. And so it was at that time, Tara, then 2 weeks before the trip that we were going to leave, we still didn't know where to go. And we got an email from a friend of Tara's, just out of the blue, that she hadn't heard from in 3 years. Her name was Maria. And I immediately says, that's where we're going to go. And that place ended up being?
Amantani Island in the Titicaca Lake. So my friend, that by the way she was not Adventist, she arranged a tour for us already, and we went to the island. The plan was to stay overnight there, and a lady host her house in her house. And what happened is, going to her house, I asked her, do you know this person? Because I went before to Amantani Island some years ago. And she said, yes, it's my cousin. Well, I know that person was Adventist. And I said, well, if she is your cousin and if she's Adventist, you must be an Adventist too. And she said, yes. So I was really happy, and I told you, Merlin, where can I stay overnight in an Adventist home here in the middle of the Titicaca Lake in this island? That was wonderful. And then we knew at that moment that God led us to that place.
So the interesting part, before we even met this lady, though, was that God had ordained us to meet this lady. The tour guide had like 10 ladies lined up in front of us, and he pointed to us. He says, this lady to the left, you're going to stay with her in her home. And he went through all the other people that were staying there. And at the end, he looked at his sheet again, and he says, no, you're going to stay with the lady all the way to the right, the opposite side. And we, wow. And it was then that we learned that this lady was Adventist. And as we went to their home, and she cooked for us that night in front of an open fire, cooking with eucalyptus.
What happened is, she was with her father and her 3 kids. And then the father, noticing that we were Adventists, he said, well, if you're missionaries, where are the materials that you brought for us? In reality, I had my computer. And in the place, they didn't have electricity at all, so I can charge it. But I had a picture, a copy, printed of the 10 Commandments. So I said, that is what I'm going to talk to them. And she was cooking, as you said, and I started to tell the kids, do you know this? Do you know what this is? And they said, no. Would you like that I can tell you a story? Sure. So, and we ended up talking
5 hours that night. Tara talked to the family, the father.
We got hailstorm. I remember in the metal roof, it was so loud, but I tried to speak louder, and the kids, they just were amazed with the story of the Exodus and the Israelites, and the 10 Commandments. And suddenly something happened. Benita was cooking, and she was giving me her bag, and suddenly she turned around and she was crying. And she told me, don't leave, please, because she knew that next day we should leave. She said, please don't leave. Stay with us and I'll feed you. Stay for 3 months, I'll feed you. And that is where my heart broke, because I said, what's going on here? Is there an attention, pastoral attention? Do we have missionaries in this island? There must be an answer. So I felt the need and the hunger for the Word of God.
And it was the father who said that the church had been locked and closed. And it was over a few years ago that they were just sitting in the church. They didn't know what to do, what to read. They didn't know anything. So they finally just shut the doors of the church and locked it so nobody would steal anything out of it. It was then that we went back to town the next day and met with our friend Maria. And we asked her, do you know where the conference is for the Seventh-day Adventist?
Oh, she said, oh yes, the Adventists are my best friends. I'll take you over there. By the way, Maria is not Adventist. She's Mormon. And for me, you know, a Mormon knows everything about the Seventh-day Adventist church because she grew up in the Adventist schools. Her friends are Adventists, and in my mind is how she cannot be an Adventist, you know, with that environment. However, she took me that morning, and we met with the conference president, and we met with his wife, and finally all of us, we get knowing each other from the past, and that was good. We talked to the president what is going on in the island, and he told us this sad story that once, many years ago, 50% of the population of the inhabitants in the island, they were Adventists. But with the time and no missionaries and no budget and no money, they stopped attending church and doing other things. And he made a project. We took the project. We brought the project over the U.S. We present to our church
and to our friends.
And to our friends, if they are able to help us to raise funds for this
so
challenge.
To start the challenge, it was for books and lesson studies, and a pastor for 1 year. It was $7,000.
Yes, including salary, everything. So we got the money.
We got the money. And then pretty soon, a few months later, we were able to have enough money for 2 more pastors.
Yes.
So we ended up with 3 pastors for 3/4 of a year.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to open 3 churches.
Now the churches, they were locked, and now they are open.
And they're full.
And we have about 350 people. We have baptisms every week. And the missionaries, they were in charge to give the lessons studies so that people can understand prophecy, sanctuary, everything that we need to know, and to be faithful to God in tithe and offerings. You know, these people in Amantani, they don't have a big income. They just have enough money to take care of their crops and fields. And with that, they don't sell their stuff. It's for themselves to survive. So what they give for tithe and offering is really little. But we know that for God, doesn't matter the quantity. For God matters your fidelity with Him, and they are. So that's the most important. It's amazing what the district pastor told us. The tithe is going up. The offerings are going up. And that is a big sign. The missionaries start to visit them door by door, and they feel like they were attended. Somebody was caring for them, and that was good.
The governor of the island, the first time that we were there, he wouldn't even talk to us. Wouldn't even hardly say hi to us. We happened to meet him on the top of the island walking from one place to another.
Yeah.
And this last time we went there, we met him in the same place. And you know what? He stopped and he talked to us and he says, we are so happy those 3 ministers are here on the island. They're doing such a good work.
Well, there's something wonderful that happened. We have a small Adventist school, elementary school. However, the island has a public school, elementary and high school. And one of the missionaries, he just went and challenged the director, the principal. He says, please, let me go in and teach religion to the kids of the high school. And the director said, are you kidding me? This is public school. Go to your Adventist school and teach them. This is public. We're Catholics. He says, but they need to know. Look at these lessons, because we already shipped the lessons from Amazing Facts in Spanish full color over there. And the director started to look at the lessons and, all right, but he accepted after 3 times that the missionary asked for permission. Well, the director gave one grade, I think it was the 2nd grade of high school, for Josue, that was the name of our missionary. And after that, the director saw that it was good. Then gave another grade, 3rd grade, and finally Josue finished with 150 students from that public school in the regular hours of classes teaching religion. That was amazing. From that 150 students, he got 50 kids involved to start a Pathfinder club in the church with non-Adventists. Most of those kids now are baptized. So these kids are drawing their parents to the church. So that was a good method, strategy that he used for that.
And also there's a school on the island.
Yes.
And where's that on the island?
The school is in the side of San Cayuni, very close to one of the main ports.
The school was going to be shut down. There was not enough interest to pay for teachers on the island. And so when we were there in April of 2015, all the parents came together and says they had to talk to us. So when they talked to us, they were non-Adventist. And they says, you have to keep this school open. We love what you're teaching here.
What happened is we got this Adventist school full years ago. But then the government built the public school where the education is free. So many of the Adventist people, instead of paying, monthly to the Adventist school, because no money, they put their kids in the public school. So we need help. We need a student aid, in order for the Adventist families to put their kids again in the Adventist school. And as Merlin said, the parents that they are not Adventists, they can see the difference of the education.
Yes.
That's why they don't want the school closed.
So we now have hired 2 more teachers for the island there, but we also need to rebuild the school and hire even more teachers because there's such a big interest to come to that school. And it's a little bit different there. I know people want to have the parents pay, but they have such little money on that island. And I feel that we need to just pay for the teachers in the school and let the kids come freely.
It's about, if we talk in dollars, it's about $20 or maybe $18 a month per kid. So if you're able to help us sponsoring one of those kids, or just part of that payment for the year. Every scholar year starts in March and ends in December. It's different than in the US, the calendar. So we're more than welcome to receive donations and to send over the island.
And things are progressing a lot this year. At the start of this year, in 2016, we have now hired 7 pastors now.
For 2016, we have presence of missionaries not only in Amantani, that is the largest natural island that we have in there, in Titicaca Lake, but also in Taquile, that is a smaller island. So Amantani will have 2 missionaries, Taquile 2 missionaries, and then we have in the mainland a very high altitude. The place is Alto Crucero. They don't have presence of any type of pastor. However, this missionary will be as a district pastor. So it will be five missionaries plus in the mainland, also in a city called Juli, that they call the little Rome of America because they have so many Catholic churches at the same time in that small town. We have 2 missionaries that some friends, Adventist friends from Canada, they are sponsoring them.
And that church, again, that church was closed also.
Yeah.
And there was no Adventist presence there. There was only like 4 Adventists left
They
there.
were hired this last December of 2015, and they found like 3 young adults, 4 adults, and then 3 kids. That was it. So guess what? The 26th of December was the anniversary of this church, and they started to gather the people that they quit going to church. So why you're coming and visiting? Visiting is the key if you want to keep your church alive, because you're showing that you care for the brethren. And this is what they did. They started to visiting, and they came for the anniversary. The church was full, and then it says, we gotta paint this church, and they gathered some money and they painted the inside and the outside. Then it started to reorganize the church. So the missionaries, they reorganize in small groups. They go very early in the morning, close by the shore of the lake, to pray at exactly time, and that is what is helping. I believe prayer has power because the Bible says so, and they are doing a great job. And another thing that they did was about with the drivers of public transportation. They suddenly came with this idea out of the blue. We got to evangelize these people. So they started to give seminars to these drivers about good manners, about talking with people, how to be clean and be presentable. You know, even your driver, you have to be clean and presentable for your clients. And they finished with the Bible. And at the end of the seminars, there were some people baptized. I mean, we have a huge report from 15th of December to the January the 9th. And that was a lot of work done in Huli.
And the church was full.
Yes, and it was full.
In 1 month. And again, now this project was started with presenting the 10 Commandments
Yes.
to not only the people, but to the mayors, to the governors,
Yes.
to the chief of police.
Yes, up and down in Peru, from the north to the south.
So we have made framed copies of the 10 Commandments. We have gone and we've talked to each one of these people that represent the different areas, and they're very enthused that we are there. Some people have said, some of the leaders have said, this place and time was designated by God that we should meet and receive the 10 Commandments.
It's important when our churches, they not only just remember the 10 Commandments, but they know what the 10 Commandments said. It's simply the way that God set up before us to go through. And if we obey, we will be happy, and truly happy, because when we obey God's commandments is when we find peace.
So in the front of our Advent missions, the mission statement is a statement from Ellen White in the book Maranatha, June 11th. And it says, the downtrodden law of God will be uplifted before all nations just before he returns. Mm-hmm. So we have the privilege to work for God to lift up the law and to teach people the law and what it really means. And so now in Peru, there's at least 11 stone copies of 10 Commandments that are 6 feet tall, and one is 8 feet tall.
Carved in stone.
Carved in stone.
We have in churches, we have in institutions like Adventist schools and universities.
From Arequipa to Cusco to Puno and on the island. And Trujillo also. This is making a big impact because we are definitely lifting up the law of God and people are listening.
Something that we did last year was in September. We didn't expect it to come back again to Peru, but we received a phone call from the conference saying that they have a project to make a movie about Ferdinand Estal, or Fernando Estal. That was the name in Spanish. So we didn't know if say yes or no to be the main actors. So finally we decided, if this is for God, we're gonna do this. So we came back to Peru in September. We stayed for 3 weeks, filming and recording all those clips. Ends up that we already have the production, and it was presented in Los Angeles. Was in December 12th, and in Peru was the premiere December the 19th. This movie is very significant for my country, for Peru. because it tells you the story how the gospel was spread among the native Indians in the Peruvian Altiplano at southern Peru. Fred and Estelle was a nurse, his wife too, and they, in the year 1909 approximately, he wrote a letter and talked with Ellen White. She was still alive, and he asked her, "Is there any possibility that you can send me? I want to be a missionary in the most difficult place in the world. I thought it would be Madagascar in Africa or Titicaca Lake in Peru." And Ellen White says, "Well, it's coming, the Congress. Why don't you present your services to them?" So he did. And the Congress says, well, the GC said, "We can send you to Titicaca Lake, but we don't have money to move you." Because he had a wife, he had a family, and he decided to sell his small sanatorium and says, "Don't worry, I'll pay my own expenses." So with that money, he moved all his family over Peru to a land that he didn't know, with a language that he didn't know. He started in Bolivia, and then he moved to Peru. His son Wallace was about 8 years old. He is the one that learned the dialect that was Aymara, that only was spoke among that native Indians in the Altiplano. So Fred and Estelle, we know as a nurse, we know him as a pastor, but also we know him not only as a missionary but as a revolutionary, because that's the thing that he did in Peru. The native Indians, do you remember, Merlin, how the society in Peru at the time they called them?
Dogs.
Why?
They thought they couldn't learn anything.
The wealthy people, together with the Catholic Church, they explored the native Indian. They didn't give them a right to read, to write, to any type of education.
No medicine.
No medicines, no nothing, and they abused of them. Anyway, it's a long story to make it short. The Catholic Church with the wealthy people, when they saw Fred and Estelle going over there and trying to teach how to read, how to write, about cleanness, how to keep their clothes and their bodies clean, and heal their wounds, and teach them to stop chewing coca and not drinking alcohol, they didn't like at all, because they knew that they're gonna lose their slaves. They didn't like at all. But the people start to love that white man, that he left everything in America, his comfort zone, to go over these highlands in Peru. Well, this movie is about this. And also adding that after Fred and Estelle make his ministry in the Altiplano, who follow him was Pedro Calvermater from Argentina. And in his time, when he was building churches and schools, the priest, they talked with some other Indians, native Indians, that they got drunk to kill the Adventists that they were building these churches and schools. So they ran with horses over them
and shot them. And
shot
we saw
them.
the original guns that were used.
And was really sad. This is recorded. This is not something that we keep as an Adventist, but it's recorded in history. And this movie presents all of this story, and let us know and let us feel our starting, how the gospel is very hard when you don't have anything in a land that is linked to God. And it's very hard in the beginnings. Now we have a church already set up, with this institutions, schools, hospitals, sanitariums, everything, universities. We have a legacy. And when we know the history, we start to love our church and know what is our duty.
And there was an incident that happened when the 12 Adventists were killed, that a lady you had brought up in history what happened.
That happened in 1914, if I'm not mistaken in that. But an Adventist man whose name was Maida, he was murdered for the same reason. So his wife, she cut the head of her husband that was already dead and wrapped very nicely with napkins of linen, and she put the head in a basket, and she decided to go to the office of the president of Peru, of the country. We're talking about people, Indian people, that they already knew how to write, how to read, and they already knew their rights, that nobody can abuse of them. So thanks to the gospel, that she was brave, because most of the Indians, they were not brave before the gospel came into their lives. So she was brave, and she went to the president of Peru at that time, and she put the basket in there, and she said, I asked for justice, not only for the life of my husband, but for the life of many other Indians that they were murdered. And at that time, the Catholic Church, they wanted to kick out of Peru Ferdinand Estelle, Calvert Mater also, and they appealed to the government, to the president, please, we don't want these people in here. And the answer of the president was, you know what? You Catholics, you are more than 400 years here, and you have done nothing for the Indian. And these people leaving everything in their countries, they came, they taught them how to read and write, and how to be humans. They are not going to leave the country, they are going to stay. And that's the story. So those pioneers in the Altiplano, they gave us a good legacy to continue. This is a story that doesn't need to stop. We are the ones, and you are the ones that need to continue the work.
What's the name of the movie?
The Last Witness. The Last Witness. So it will be available very soon for you to watch it and understand about who is the last witness.